My brother called me a failure for marrying a shepherd. 3 months later, he was begging that same shepherd for $200,000. But what Marcus didn't know about my husband's secret workshop would change everything. This is how a family who looked down on us learned they were dead wrong about who we really were. You know that feeling when you walk into a room and instantly know you don't belong? That's exactly how I felt on what was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. The chapel was gorgeous, I'll give you that. Sunlight streaming through stained glass windows, white roses everywhere, and about 100 guests dressed to the nines. My husband Jake looked handsome, in his simple black suit, the one we'd saved up for months to buy. He was beaming at me like I was the most beautiful woman in the world. But then, there was my brother Marcus. Designer tuxedo probably cost more than our monthly mortgage. He was sitting in the front row next to his wife Rachel, who looked like she'd stepped off a magazine cover. And my mother Ava, bless her heart, trying to keep the peace, as always. Here's the thing about my wedding dress. It wasn't from some fancy boutique. I'd found it at a consignment shop 3 towns over. It was simple cream-colored, nothing flashy, but it was mine and I loved it. Jake had tears in his eyes when he first saw me in it. Marcus didn't see it that way. As I walked down that aisle, I could hear the whispers starting. Not the good kind of whispers you want at a wedding. Rachel leaned over to the woman next to her and said loud enough for half the chapel to hear, "Well, I guess when you marry a shepherd, you dress like one." My stomach dropped. Every step toward the altar felt like I was walking through quicksand. These people, these family friends I'd grown up with, they were all looking at me like I was some kind of charity case. Jake must have seen the panic in my eyes because he stepped forward and took my hand earlier than he was supposed to. "Hey," he whispered, "you look absolutely perfect. Don't let them get in your head." But the damage was already done. During the ceremony, I could feel their judgment like a weight on my shoulders. When the pastor asked if anyone objected, I swear I held my breath, terrified someone might actually speak up. The worst part came during the reception. Marcus had been drinking, and his filter was completely gone. He pulled our mother aside, but I was close enough to hear every word. "Mom, seriously, a shepherd Lily could have done so much better. She's got a college degree. She's smart and she throws it all away for some guy who smells like sheep." Eva tried to defend me. "Marcus Jake's a good man. He makes her happy." "Happy doesn't pay for a decent wedding dress, Mom. Look at this place." He gestured around the small community center we'd rented. "This is embarrassing. What are our friends going to think, that we raised a daughter who settled for scraps?" Rachel chimed in with her sweet voice that had poison underneath. "I mean, I'm sure he's nice and all, but let's be realistic. What kind of future can she have with someone like that? They'll be living paycheck to paycheck forever." I felt Jake's hand tighten around mine. He'd heard it too, but instead of getting angry, he just looked at me and said, "You ready to get out of here, Mrs. Collins?" That's when I realized something. The people who truly mattered, the ones who loved me for who I was, they were right there with me. Everyone else, they were just noise. But Marcus wasn't done. As we were leaving, he caught up with us at the door. "Lily, wait. I'm sorry if that sounded harsh, but I'm just looking out for you. It's not too late to reconsider. You could still have a real life, a real future." Jake stepped forward, and for a second, I thought he might actually say something, but he just shook his head and said, "Come on, honey, let's go home." As we drove away from my own wedding reception, I had no idea that this was just the beginning. I had no idea that my brother's words would come back to haunt him in ways he never saw coming. Sometimes, the people who think they know your worth are about to learn they don't know anything at all. But that lesson, that was still months away. 3 months after our wedding, Marcus decided it was time for a family barbecue. You know, to properly welcome Jake into the family. His words, not mine. Their house was everything you'd expect. 2-story, colonial, in the nicest part of town, perfectly manicured lawn 3-car garage. The kind of place that screams, "We've made it," from the moment you pull into the circular driveway. Rachel met us at the door wearing a sundress that probably cost more than Jake's monthly salary. "Oh, you made it," she said with that fake enthusiasm she'd perfected. "I was starting to worry you got lost. I know you're not used to this neighborhood." Jake just smiled and handed her the apple pie I'd made from scratch. "Thanks for having us. This looks like a beautiful home." "Oh, isn't it Marcus designed most of it himself? He has such an eye for luxury." She emphasized that last word, while looking directly at our 10-year-old pickup truck parked behind their BMW. The backyard was like something out of a home and garden magazine, built-in grill outdoor kitchen pool with a waterfall feature. Marcus was manning the grill wearing an apron that said, "King of the Castle." "There's the happy couple," he called out, flipping what looked like premium steaks. "Hope you brought your appetites. We've got top-shelf everything today." My mother Eva was already there looking uncomfortable in one of the expensive patio chairs. She gave me a look that said, "Be nice," before I even opened my mouth. The trouble started during dinner. We were all sitting around their glass-top table when Rachel decided to make conversation. "So Jake, tell us about your day. What's it like working with all those animals?" Jake was cutting his steak completely unbothered. "It's rewarding work, actually. Each sheep has its own personality. It's more complex than people think." Rachel wrinkled her nose like she'd smelled something bad. "Don't they smell terrible? I mean, how do you stand being around all that filth?" I felt my jaw clench, but Jake just laughed. "You get used to it. Besides, honest work has its own rewards." That's when Marcus jumped in. "Honest work, sure, but let's be realistic here. When was the last time a shepherd bought a house like this?" He gestured around his property. "I'm not trying to be mean, but there's a difference between honest work and smart work." Eva set down her fork. "Marcus, that's enough." "No, Mom, I'm just being practical. Look, Jake seems like a nice guy, but Lily deserves better than living in some tiny farmhouse for the rest of her life. She could have married a doctor, a lawyer, someone with real prospects." Rachel nodded along like she was backing up her husband. "We're just concerned about Lily's future. What happens when you want to start a family? Can you really raise children on a shepherd's income?" The silence was deafening. I could feel my face burning with embarrassment, but Jake remained perfectly calm. He took a sip of his water and said, "We'll manage just fine. Not everyone needs a mansion to be happy." "But wouldn't you want to give your children the best?" Rachel pressed. "Private schools, college funds, nice clothes, those things cost money." Marcus leaned back in his chair, getting warmed up. "That's exactly my point. I worked my tail off to build this life to give my family security. I just don't understand why Lily would choose to struggle when she doesn't have to." "She's not struggling," Jake said quietly, but there was steel in his voice now. "She's living the life she chose." "With a man who herds sheep for a living," Marcus shot back. "Come on, be honest. When you were kids, did Lily ever say she wanted to marry a farmer and live in the middle of nowhere?" "I'd had enough." "Marcus, stop." "I'm just saying what everyone's thinking, Lily. You're smart, you're educated, you could have had anyone. Instead, you're living paycheck to paycheck with a guy who smells like livestock." Rachel laughed, actually laughed. "Oh, honey, I'm sure Jake's very sweet, but let's not pretend this is some fairy tale romance. This is real life." Eva stood up abruptly. "That's it. We're leaving." "Mom, sit down. We're just having a conversation," Marcus said, but Eva was already gathering her purse. "This isn't a conversation, it's an ambush. Jake, Lily. I'm sorry, this is not how family treats family." As we were walking to the car, I heard Rachel call out, "We're just looking out for her. Someone has to tell her the truth." The truth. Like they had any idea what the truth was. Jake was quiet during the drive home, his hands gripped tight on the steering wheel. Finally, he said, "I'm sorry you had to sit through that." "You have nothing to apologize for," I told him. "They're the ones who should be ashamed." But as we pulled into our driveway, looking at our modest little farmhouse with its peeling paint and overgrown garden, I couldn't help but wonder if Maybe Marcus had a point. That doubt would eat at me for weeks. What I didn't know was that Jake had been working on something that would change everything. Something that would turn my brother's smug assumptions upside down. But that revelation was still weeks away. That night, after the barbecue disaster, I couldn't sleep. Marcus's words kept replaying in my head. Living paycheck to paycheck. Smells like livestock. She could have had anyone. I found myself standing at our bedroom window, looking out at the pasture where our sheep were grazing in the moonlight. Was this really all we'd ever have? This little farmhouse with its creaky floors and drafty windows? Jake found me there around midnight. Can't sleep either. Just thinking, I said. Maybe Marcus has a point. Maybe I did settle. Jake was quiet for a long moment. Then he said something that caught me completely off guard. Want to see something that might change your mind? What do you mean? Come with me. There's something I've been working on, something I've been waiting for the right time to show you. I followed him outside across the yard to what I thought was just his old workshop. But when he opened the door and flicked on the lights, my jaw dropped. The entire space had been transformed. Computer monitors lined one wall displaying charts and graphs I didn't recognize. There were circuit boards scattered across workbenches, cables running everywhere, and in the center of it all, a sophisticated control panel that looked like something out of a science fiction movie. Jake, what is this? He grinned, and I saw excitement in his eyes that I hadn't seen since our wedding day. This is why I've been staying up late every night for the past 2 years. This is why I sometimes come out here after dinner and don't come back until morning. He walked over to one of the monitors and started typing. Suddenly, the screen lit up with what looked like a satellite map of our property. But there were dozens of small dots moving across it. Each one of those dots is one of our sheep, he said. Every animal on this farm has a GPS tracker and health monitor. I can tell you exactly where each one is, what their heart rate is, their body temperature, even their stress levels. I stared at the screen, not believing what I was seeing. You've been tracking our sheep with GPS. That's just the beginning. He pulled up another screen. This system monitors their grazing patterns, predicts optimal feeding times, and even alerts me if one of them shows signs of illness before any symptoms are visible. My mind was reeling. Jake, how long have you been working on this? Since before we got married, actually. Remember all those late nights I said I was fixing equipment? I was building this, designing it, testing it, perfecting it. He showed me tablet after tablet of data. Productivity increases, cost reductions, health improvements in our livestock, numbers that made my head spin. But why didn't you tell me? Jake ran his hand through his hair, looking almost embarrassed. Because I wanted to make sure it worked first. I didn't want to get your hopes up if it was just some crazy dream. Crazy dream, Jake? This is incredible. This is like something Google would develop. Funny you should mention that. He walked over to a filing cabinet and pulled out a stack of papers. I've been in talks with several agricultural technology companies. They want to license the system. I looked at the letterheads. John Deere, Cargill, companies I'd heard of but never imagined we'd have any connection to. License it for how much? Jake's smile got even wider. The initial offer from the biggest interested party is $30 million. For the patents and the right to manufacture the system nationwide. I had to sit down. $30 million. More money than I could even comprehend. There's more, Jake said, pulling out another folder. I've also developed a mobile app that farmers can use to monitor their livestock remotely, and a subscription service for the data analytics. The potential revenue stream could be in the hundreds of millions. I looked around the workshop with new eyes. This wasn't just some hobby project. This was a full-scale technology business disguised as a sheep farm. Jake, you're not just a shepherd, you're a tech entrepreneur. I'm both, he said simply. I love the animals. I love the farm life. But that doesn't mean I can't innovate. I thought about Rachel's comments at dinner, about Marcus calling Jake's work honest, but not smart, about their assumption that we were struggling financially. Do they have any idea? Your family. No, and I want to keep it that way, at least for now. Let them think what they want to think. But why we could shut them up with one conversation? Jake shook his head. Because I don't need their approval. We don't need their approval. What we're building here, it's not about proving anything to Marcus or Rachel. It's about building the life we want. As I stood there, surrounded by millions of dollars worth of cutting-edge technology, hidden away in what everyone assumed was just a rundown farm workshop, I realized something profound. My husband wasn't the simple shepherd my brother thought he was. He was a genius who'd been quietly revolutionizing an entire industry while Marcus was busy showing off his expensive grill and talking about honest work versus smart work. The irony was delicious. But I had no idea that within weeks Marcus would come crawling to us begging for help. And when he did, he'd discover that the people he'd looked down on were about to change his world forever. Sometimes the smartest person in the room is the one everyone underestimates. 2 weeks after Jake showed me his secret workshop, I was still processing everything. $30 million. We were sitting on $30 million, and my brother had spent an entire evening telling us we were failures. I was in the kitchen making breakfast when my phone rang. It was 7 a.m. on a Tuesday. The caller ID showed Marcus's name, Lily. Thank God you answered. His voice sounded different, shaky, desperate. Marcus, what's wrong? Is Mom okay? Mom's fine. It's me and Rachel. We need to talk. Can I come over? I looked out the window at Jake feeding the sheep, completely unaware that our world was about to shift again. Come over here, to the farm. Please, Lily, it's important. Really important. There was something in his voice I'd never heard before. Fear. An hour later, I watched that familiar BMW pull into our gravel driveway. But this time, Marcus wasn't getting out with his usual confident swagger. He looked like he'd aged 10 years overnight. His designer clothes were wrinkled, and Rachel's perfect makeup couldn't hide the fact that she'd been crying. They stood at our front door looking like refugees from their own life. Come in, I said, because despite everything, he was still my brother. They sat on our old couch, the one we'd bought secondhand when we first moved in. Rachel kept looking around our modest living room like she was seeing it for the first time. Which, in a way, she was. She'd never actually been inside our house before. Marcus cleared his throat. Lily, I need to ask you something and I need you to hear me out before you say no. Okay, my business is gone. The construction company, the contracts, everything. We made some bad investments, took on too much debt. The banks are foreclosing on everything. Rachel started crying again. We're going to lose the house, the cars, everything we've worked for. I felt a strange mixture of sympathy and satisfaction, not because I wanted them to suffer, but because karma had finally caught up with their arrogance. I'm sorry to hear that, I said, and I meant it. What does this have to do with me? Marcus took a deep breath. We need money, a lot of money, enough to pay off the debt and start over. How much money? $200,000. The number hung in the air between us. To them, it probably seemed impossible. To us, after what Jake had shown me, it was pocket change. Marcus, Jake, and I don't have that kind of money lying around. But you have the land, Rachel said desperately. This farm, it's got to be worth at least that much. You could take out a mortgage, use it as collateral. Now I understood. They wanted us to risk our home, our livelihood, to bail them out of their mistakes. Marcus leaned forward. Lily, I know I haven't always been the best brother. I know I said some things at the barbecue that were out of line. But we're family. Family helps family. Family helps family, I repeated. That's interesting, considering you spent months telling me I'd ruined my life by marrying Jake. I was wrong about that, he said quickly. I can see that now. Jake's a good guy. You two have something real here. Rachel nodded frantically. We were just concerned about your future. We never meant to hurt you. I looked at these two people who had spent so much energy looking down on us, and now they were sitting in our living room begging for help. Let me get this straight, I said. You want Jake and me to mortgage our farm, the home we've built together, to pay for your mistakes? It's not like that, Marcus protested. It's a loan. We'll pay you back with interest. With what money? You just said your business is gone. We'll figure it out. We'll start over. I'm smart. I'm resourceful. I can build it all back up. Rachel was sobbing now. Please, Lily. We have nowhere else to turn. If we lose everything, we'll have nothing. We'll be homeless. I felt Jake's presence before I saw him. He'd come in through the back door and was standing in the doorway, taking in the scene. Everything okay in here? Marcus looked up at him with desperate eyes. Jake, maybe you can talk sense into her. We need help and we're willing to pay for it. Jake walked over and sat down beside me. What kind of help? They want us to mortgage the farm to loan them $200,000, I explained. Jake's expression didn't change. I see. Jake, you seem like a reasonable man, Rachel said, turning on what was left of her charm. Surely you understand that sometimes families have to make sacrifices for each other. Sacrifices, Jake repeated thoughtfully. Like the sacrifice Lily made when she sat through that barbecue and listened to you tell her she'd wasted her life? Marcus had the grace to look ashamed. That was different. I was trying to protect her. Protect her from what? From being happy. From making a mistake that would ruin her future. The room went quiet. Outside, I could hear the sheep calling to each other in the pasture. It was such a peaceful sound compared to the tension inside our house. I stood up. Marcus, Rachel, I'm going to say something and I want you to really hear me. They both looked at me with hopeful expressions. We're not going to help you. The hope died in their eyes instantly. Lily, please, Marcus started. No, let me finish. For months you've treated Jake and me like we were charity cases. You've made jokes about our clothes, our house, our life choices. You've acted like we were an embarrassment to the family. We never meant, you meant every word. And now when your perfect life falls apart, you come running to the people you look down on. You want us to risk everything we've built to fix your mistakes. Rachel stood up shakily. We're desperate, Lily. We wouldn't ask if we had any other choice. That's exactly the problem, I said. We're not your first choice. We're not even your second choice. We're your last resort. The people you only remember exist when you need something. Marcus tried one more time. Lily, I'm begging you. I'm your brother. You're right. You are my brother. And if you had treated me like a sister, instead of like a disappointment, maybe we'd be having a different conversation right now. I walked to the front door and opened it. I think you should leave. They both stared at me like they couldn't believe what they were hearing. You're really going to let us lose everything, Rachel whispered. You lost everything the moment you decided to look down on people who loved you, I said. Jake and I didn't cause your problems, and we're not responsible for fixing them. As they walked to their car, Marcus turned back one more time. This isn't over, Lily. Family doesn't abandon family. You're absolutely right, I called after him. Family doesn't abandon family. Maybe you should have remembered that 3 months ago. I watched their BMW disappear down our driveway, and for the first time in my life, I felt completely free from my brother's judgment. What Marcus didn't know was that his visit had just set in motion a chain of events that would change everything. Because Jake had been listening to every word, and he'd just made a decision that would turn this entire situation upside down. Sometimes, the people who think they hold all the cards are about to discover they're not even playing the same game. After Marcus and Rachel left, Jake was unusually quiet for the rest of the day. I found him in his workshop that evening, staring at his computer screens, but not really seeing them. You okay? He turned to me with a look I'd never seen before. Determined. Almost fierce. Call your brother. Tell him we want to meet. Jake, we already said no. What's the point? Trust me on this one, Lily. Tell him we've reconsidered. We want to discuss terms. I didn't understand, but I trusted Jake completely. The next morning, I called Marcus. Lily. He sounded like he'd been up all night. Please tell me you've changed your mind. Jake wants to meet all of us this afternoon. Oh, thank God, I knew you'd come around. Family always comes through for family. The relief in his voice made me feel sick. He still didn't get it. Don't thank me yet, Marcus. Just be here at 2 o'clock. Herthis. They arrived exactly on time, probably the first time in their lives they'd been punctual for anything at our house. Marcus looked hopeful. Rachel looked desperate. They had no idea what was coming. We sat around our kitchen table, the same one where Jake and I ate breakfast every morning. It felt surreal having this conversation in the heart of our home. So, Marcus said, pulling out a folder of papers, I've worked out the loan terms. $200,000 at 5% interest paid back over 10 years. I know it's a big ask, but before we talk numbers, Jake interrupted, I want to show you something. He stood up and walked to the counter where he'd placed a thick manila folder. When he came back to the table, his entire demeanor had changed. This wasn't the quiet, humble shepherd Marcus thought he knew. Marcus, Rachel, what do you think I do for a living? Marcus looked confused by the question. You raise sheep, you're a shepherd. And what does that mean to you? It means you work with animals. You live off the land. It's honest work, but he trailed off, realizing he was about to insult Jake again. But not very lucrative, Jake finished for him. Not very sophisticated, not the kind of work that builds wealth or creates opportunities. I didn't say that. You didn't have to. Jake opened the folder and pulled out the first document. This is a patent application filed with the United States Patent and Trademark Office. Patent number 11234567, filed by Jacob Collins for a revolutionary livestock monitoring and management system. He slid the paper across the table. Marcus picked it up, his eyes scanning the official seal in legal language. This is a patent for technology that tracks and monitors the health, location, and behavior of livestock using advanced GPS and biometric sensors. The system can predict illness before symptoms appear, optimize feeding schedules, and increase productivity by up to 40%. Rachel was staring at the document like it was written in a foreign language. I don't understand. You filed a patent. I filed 12 patents, actually. Jake pulled out more papers. All related to agricultural technology, livestock management, and data analytics for farming operations. Marcus looked up from the papers, confusion clear on his face. Jake, what is this? This is what I do for a living, Marcus. I'm not just a shepherd. I'm the inventor of technology that's about to revolutionize the agricultural industry. Jake pulled out his laptop and opened it on the table. The screen showed the same monitoring system he'd shown me weeks earlier, with dozens of sheep moving across our property in real time. Every animal on this farm is being monitored 24/7 by technology I developed. Their location, their health, their behavior patterns. I can predict which sheep will get sick before they show symptoms. I can optimize their feeding to maximize wool production. I can prevent theft, track breeding cycles, and manage an entire operation from this laptop. Marcus was staring at the screen, his mouth slightly open. You built this. I built this, and more importantly, I'm licensing it. Jake pulled out another set of documents, letters from John Deere, Cargill, and ADM, all with official letterheads, all with very large numbers. These are licensing offers from some of the biggest agricultural companies in the world. They want to buy the rights to manufacture and distribute my technology to farms across the country. He slid the letters across the table. Marcus picked up the top one and read the number out loud. $30 million. His voice was barely a whisper. That's just the initial licensing fee, Jake said calmly. The ongoing royalties could be worth 10 times that amount over the next decade. Rachel grabbed the letter from Marcus and read it herself. This is real. This is actually real. It's real. Your sister is married to someone who's about to become one of the wealthiest agricultural technology developers in the country. The silence in the room was deafening. I watched Marcus's face go through about 5 different emotions in the span of 10 seconds. Shock, disbelief, embarrassment, and finally, something that looked like shame. So, when you told us we were living paycheck to paycheck, I said quietly, When you said Jake would never be able to provide for a family, when you laughed at our simple wedding and our modest house, you had no idea what you were talking about. Marcus set the papers down with shaking hands. Lily, I had no idea. How could I have known? You couldn't have known, Jake said. But that's not the point. The point is that you made assumptions. You judged us based on appearances. You decided our worth based on what you could see, instead of taking the time to actually know us. Rachel was crying again, but these weren't tears of desperation. These were tears of humiliation. We treated you terribly, she whispered. We treated you both terribly. Yes, you did, I said. And now you want us to risk our future to save yours. Marcus looked up at me with eyes that had lost all their arrogance. Lily, if you can afford to help us, please. I'm begging you. Now you're begging the people you thought were beneath you. I was wrong. I was completely wrong about everything. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the pasture where our sheep were grazing. The sheep that were worth millions of dollars in technology development. The sheep that had made us richer than Marcus had ever dreamed of being. You know what the saddest part is, Marcus? If you had treated us with respect from the beginning, if you had welcomed Jake into the family, instead of looking down on him, we probably would have helped you without a second thought. I turned back to face them. But you didn't. You treated us like an embarrassment. You made jokes about our life, our choices, our future. You acted like we were charity cases who needed your pity. We were wrong, Marcus said desperately. We see that now. Do you just see dollar signs? The question hung in the air. Marcus opened his mouth to answer, then closed it again. Here's what I've learned, I said, my voice getting stronger with each word. Family isn't just about sharing DNA. Real family is about respect, support, and love. It's about believing in each other and building each other up, not tearing each other down. I looked directly at Marcus. You're my brother by blood, but Jake is my family by choice. He believed in me when you thought I was making a mistake. He supported my dreams when you thought I was throwing my life away. He saw my worth when you saw my failures. Jake reached over and took my hand. So, no, Marcus. We're not going to help you. Not because we can't afford to, but because you've shown us who you really are when the chips are down. And the person you are isn't someone we want to enable. Marcus and Rachel sat there in stunned silence, surrounded by papers proving that the people they'd looked down on were worth more money than they'd ever imagined. Finally, Marcus spoke. What happens now? Now you figure out your own problems, I said, just like Jake and I figured out ours. As they gathered up their things and walked to the door, Marcus turned back one last time. I'm sorry, Lily, for everything. I know you are, I said. But sorry doesn't undo months of disrespect and condescension. Sorry doesn't rebuild trust that you never bothered to build in the first place. After they left Jake, and I sat in our kitchen, surrounded by the evidence of everything we'd built together. Do you think we did the right thing? I asked. Jake squeezed my hand. I think we did the only thing we could do and still respect ourselves. Outside, the sun was setting over our farm. Our incredibly valuable, technology-advanced, revolutionary farm that my brother had thought was a symbol of our failure. Sometimes the people who think they know everything are the ones who understand the least. 3 weeks passed without a word from Marcus or Rachel. I wondered if that was it, if we'd severed our relationship permanently. Part of me was okay with that. The other part of me missed my brother despite everything. Then on a Thursday evening, I got a call from my mother. Lily, honey, I need to talk to you about Marcus. Mom, if you're calling to convince me to help him, I'm not. Actually, I'm calling because I think you should know what's been happening. I sat down at our kitchen table, the same one where we'd had that confrontation weeks earlier. What do you mean? Marcus lost the house yesterday. He and Rachel are staying in a motel out by the highway. He's been applying for jobs, any jobs. Construction worker, delivery driver, anything he can find. I felt a pang of sympathy despite myself. How's he handling it? That's the thing, honey. He's different, completely different. Yesterday, he came over to my house and he just sat at my kitchen table and cried. Really cried. He said he finally understood what he'd done to you and Jake. My mother's voice was soft, careful. He asked me to give you a message. What message? He said to tell you that he's sorry. Not sorry because he needs money, but sorry because he was a terrible brother. He said he spent so much time looking down on your choices that he never bothered to see who you really were. I was quiet for a long moment processing this. Lily, I'm not asking you to forgive him or help him financially, but I am asking you to maybe consider letting him earn back your trust, if that's even possible. That night, I told Jake about the conversation. We were sitting on our front porch watching the sunset, paint the sky, orange and pink above our pasture. What do you think I should do? Jake was quiet for a while, just rocking slowly in his chair. I think, he said finally, that people can change. But they have to prove it with actions, not just words. So what would that look like? Maybe we start small, see if he's really changed, or if he's just desperate. The next evening, I called my mother back. Mom, would you like to come for dinner this weekend? Just you. I'd love that, sweetheart. And Mom, if Marcus wants to come with you, he can. But I want to be clear about something. This isn't about money. This is about family. Real family. Saturday arrived with perfect weather. Mom showed up at 5 o'clock sharp, carrying a homemade apple pie. Marcus was with her, but he looked like a different person. Gone were the designer clothes and arrogant posture. He was wearing jeans and a simple button-down shirt, and he looked genuinely nervous. Thank you for letting me come, he said quietly when I opened the door. Dinner was awkward at first. We made small talk about the weather mom's garden, anything except the elephant in the room. But as the evening went on, something shifted. Marcus asked Jake about the sheep, not in a condescending way, but with genuine curiosity. I've been thinking about what you showed us, he said. The technology, I mean. I spent my whole career in construction, and I never thought about agriculture as a tech industry. Jake lit up the way he always did when someone showed real interest in his work. Most people don't realize how sophisticated modern farming can be. Want to see the operation? I watched my brother's face as Jake led us through the workshop. His eyes got wider with each piece of equipment. Jake explained each screen full of data, each innovation that made our operation more efficient. This is incredible, Marcus said, staring at the real-time health monitoring system. You built all of this yourself. Most of it. Some of the hardware I had to source from specialty manufacturers, but the software, the integration, the applications, that's all mine. Marcus turned to me. Lily, I owe you an apology that goes way beyond what I said at Mom's house. Marcus, no, let me finish. I spent months thinking I was protecting you from making a mistake. But the truth is I was jealous. Jealous that you had the courage to choose love over security, to build something real instead of just chasing money. He looked around the workshop at all the evidence of Jake's brilliance. I thought success looked like my house, my cars, my business. But real success looks like this. Building something that matters with someone who matters. Rachel had been quiet most of the evening, but now she spoke up. Lily, I was awful to you. I said terrible things because I was insecure. You and Jake have something I thought Marcus and I had, but we were just playing house with expensive props. What happens now? I asked. Marcus ran his hand through his hair, a gesture I remembered from when we were kids. Now, I figure out how to rebuild my life the right way. I'm working construction again, starting from the bottom. It's honest work, and I'm not ashamed of it anymore. Good, I said simply. And maybe, he continued hesitantly, maybe I can learn something about real innovation, about building something that lasts. Jake and Marcus spent the next hour talking about agricultural technology, market opportunities, and the future of farming. I listened to my husband explain complex systems to my brother, who asked thoughtful questions and seemed genuinely fascinated by the answers. As the evening wound down, Marcus helped us clean up the dishes. Such a simple thing, but I couldn't remember the last time he'd helped with anything domestic. Marcus, I said as we were finishing up, I want you to know something. What you're going through now, losing everything, starting over, it doesn't make me happy. I never wanted you to suffer. I know that, and I know I brought it on myself. But here's what I've learned. Family isn't about rescuing each other from the consequences of bad choices. Real family is about supporting each other while we face those consequences and grow from them. He nodded, and I could see tears in his eyes again. I'd like to try being real family, he said, if you'll let me. I'd like that too. As they were leaving, Marcus turned back one more time, but instead of the desperate pleading from before, his expression was hopeful. Jake, would it be okay if I came back sometime? To learn more about what you're doing. I'm not asking for a job or money or anything. I'd like to understand. You're welcome anytime, Jake said, both of you. After they left, Jake and I sat back on our porch. The sheep were settling down for the night, their GPS collars blinking softly in the darkness like earthbound stars. Do you think he's really changed? I asked. I think he's trying to change. That's a start. Are we doing the right thing giving him another chance? Jake took my hand. I think we're doing what families do. We're creating space for people to grow. 6 months later, Marcus started his own small construction company. But this time, he focused on sustainable building practices and innovative techniques. He'd learned something about the value of real innovation over flashy appearances. He and Rachel divorced amicably. She moved back to her hometown to be closer to her own family. Marcus found a small apartment near Mom's house and started rebuilding his life one honest day at a time. He still comes to the farm every few weeks, not to ask for anything, just to learn. Jake has become something of a mentor to him, teaching him about persistence, innovation, and the satisfaction that comes from building something meaningful. Last month, Marcus helped us install a new solar panel system for the workshop. As we worked together in the afternoon sun, I realized something profound had happened. We'd redefined what family meant. It wasn't about blood, or obligation, or tradition. It was about choosing to see the best in each other, even when that required looking past the worst. It was about creating space for growth, forgiveness, and second chances. My brother had to lose everything he thought mattered to discover what actually did matter. And in the process, we all learned that sometimes the most broken things can be rebuilt into something stronger than they were before. Family, it turns out, isn't just something you're born into. It's something you choose to build day by day, choice by choice, forgiveness by forgiveness. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, the people you thought you'd lost forever find their way back to you as better versions of themselves. Jake was right that night on our porch. We'd created space for people to grow. And in that space, something beautiful had taken root. Maybe that's what real family is. Not people who never disappoint you, but people who are willing to do the hard work of becoming worthy of your love. And maybe that's enough. Have you ever been underestimated by people who thought they knew your worth? Share your story in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this story of hidden success and family redemption, hit that subscribe button for more incredible true stories that will keep you listening until the very end.